Chapter 7, Alignment. Imagine a beautiful mansion. It's stunning, well built, full of value, and created with intention. But even something that beautiful still needs to be positioned correctly to be chosen by the right family. One that can truly see it, see its value, and step into it fully. Because it's not just about the beauty of the home, it's about alignment. Sometimes when something doesn't move, it's not because it lacks value. It's because something in the presentation or the positioning or the timing isn't fully aligned with the people it's meant for. And this is where I want to gently bring it back to you. Many women are incredibly beautiful, accomplished, and full of value, but they may feel unseen, overlooked, or misunderstood in dating. And it's not because they aren't enough, it's because something in their energy, their positioning, or their alignment may not fully match the type of man they actually desire. This is not about lowering your standards, this is about refinement. Because when a woman is truly in her divine feminine essence, in full alignment with who she is and what she desires, she doesn't feel like she's waiting to be chosen. She becomes naturally magnetic to the right kind of man, the kind of man who actually sees her clearly, the kind of man who values her fully, the kind of man who doesn't hesitate, and instead of feeling like she's on the market, she feels pursued, chosen, and secure. So the goal is not to be picked faster. The goal is to be so aligned that the right man recognizes you immediately. And that brings me to the most important question I want you to ask yourself. Are you your type's type? Make a list of everything you desire in a partner. And then, with honesty and self awareness, ask yourself, if that man walked into your life today, would he recognize you as the woman he's been looking for? Not from a place of judgment, but from a place of growth, alignment, and stepping fully into the woman you're meant to be. Sometimes we think we have everything put together, that, we have it all, and maybe it's just the men. But sometimes I think that we as women can be a bit delusional in where we actually stand until it's brought to our attentions. Some things can be packaged so perfectly, but internally there are a lot of missing pieces. So whenever you make this list, don't just list external characteristics, also list internal characteristics. And the internal characteristics are actually the most important because these are what matters when it comes down to when a man selects his partner. Your internal characteristics, such as your emotional stability, your emotional awareness, your emotional intelligence, your genuine spirit, your expansion skills, these are all things that are intangible, but they are extremely important in a union. And a lot of women are lacking these skills. I mentioned the emotional skills first because these are the skills that women have the hardest times refining. It would be really great practice to master those skills first, as well as the other skills I mentioned, because those are actually a part of being a high value woman. A high value woman is actually not controlled by her emotions. She feels them and she does not suppress them, but she is not controlled by them. And that is a very powerful woman. That brings me to chapter 8. Rest in your inherent value, not your external achievements. Being a feminine woman takes fierce strength, discipline, and a powerful level of self-awareness because it requires the ability to love with an open heart and express your emotions in a soft, non-threatening way. The truth is this: the key to a man's heart is actually vulnerability, something I had to work on myself. And that is not for the weak. A woman in her divine feminine knows how to regulate her emotions, manage her triggers, and intentionally focus on the goodness within her man. She understands the importance of respecting masculine energy and uses the power of her love, softness, and presence to inspire and elevate him into the man he is capable of becoming. One of the biggest issues we see today is that many successful women have achieved career stability and external success, yet they still feel unfulfilled because they struggle to attract and maintain the type of relationships they truly desire. Hypergamy drives them to seek men of higher caliber. But many women unintentionally attract the wrong men because they lead with their material achievements. When you ask a career oriented woman what makes her unique, she often lists her degrees, businesses, and accomplishments. But a woman who is truly in her divine feminine essence speaks from her inner world. And I want us to all practice doing that, highlighting qualities that require deep internal work, such as grace, emotional intelligence, nurturing energy, intuition, creativity, and vulnerability. It is important to rest in your inherent value and understand that your external achievements are just that, external. But it is your intangible qualities, your energy, and your essence that truly set you apart and create the deepest level of attraction and connection. I know women who have achieved very highly. As a person who has achieved highly and has done a lot of things academically, I also had to learn how to not only become more vulnerable, but also not to lean into my external accomplishments, especially high achieving women and women who are naturally just high achieving, super ambitious, always doing something. I can understand and relate to that. But when it comes down to relating to a man, those things should actually never come up. They should be what you do, not who you are. And so I understand how hard it is for women to make the switch and only look within, only talk about those qualities that are inherent, only talk about those qualities that are intangible, but they mean a great deal. Practice that. The next time someone asks you about yourself, I want you to lead with your inherent qualities, your intangible qualities, because those are the ones that are truly going to matter when it comes down to attracting the man that you truly desire. I remember I was talking to this man, and for as long as we talked, he never really asked about school. He never asked about my career goals. He simply just liked to be around me. And it didn't make those accomplishments less, but it demonstrated to me what is the most important aspect of me as a woman. And it is not my external accomplishments, it is my inherent qualities that make him feel at peace, essentially. And so I think when women start to understand this, they will see a much different result when it comes down to the men that they attract into their lives. The less you talk about your external accomplishments, the more you lean into your internal accomplishments. And that is where we want to stay as high value feminine women. Chapter 9. A high value woman understands the importance of a man having a vision. This is so important. So many times I've heard my friends talk about the men that they're entertaining, and they have no clue what he's doing, no clue where he's going. All they know is that he looks good. I remember in college realizing how important it was to be around men who had direction and a good head on their shoulders. What many women struggle with is not just wanting a man of vision, but actually knowing how to identify and choose one. I truly believe a man can be young and still have a clear vision. I remember this one guy, I'm not going to say what his vision is, but he is still operating in that vision to this day. So, as a young lady, you can tell what a man's vision is simply by talking to him. And then after that, you can see if his everyday actions truly align with where he says he wants to go. And this will reveal itself very, very quickly. I remember my mind was blown because when I was younger, about 19 years old, I remember a guy flying into my hometown, my small little hometown. If you know me, you know, but he flew in through a storm and took me to dinner, bought my mom a piece of key lime pie, and then he flew back home. So that same guy is still operating in his vision. So I use him as an example to just say that just because a person is young, or whenever you're dating young, you can implement this very, very early. And then you'll see as you guys grow up, as you grow together, you will see that man consistently focused on his vision. And I've seen this in multiple of my male relationships. They are consistent and very still focused on their vision from the ages of like 20, 23 to like 28, 29. They're still focused on the same vision. So the earlier you actually implement this, the better. I really hope that I have a younger audience so that they can understand what I'm saying, because this is something that you would want to implement as early as possible, because the earlier you implement it, the better your interactions get with the opposite sex. For me, I was taught very early from my parents and my grandparents. And so I don't have a lot of trauma when it comes down to dating. Actually, I don't have any trauma when it comes down to dating in the opposite sex. And so I wanted to say this for young ladies growing up, that you can have a very good experience when it comes down to the opposite sex, so long as you vet intentionally and also vet from a whole space. What I am coming to understand is that what many women struggle with is not just wanting a man of vision, but again, actually knowing how to identify and choose one. I truly believe, as I said before, that a man can be young and still have a clear vision. Unfortunately, many young women, especially Black women, are not taught early how to choose wisely. As I observed others around me in college, it became clear that this level of guidance was not always the standard. However, you can absolutely be a young woman and still date young men of vision. The difference is that with an older man, you may see the results of his vision already manifested, while a younger man is actively living, breathing, and building towards it. Every young man of vision I have encountered has remained consistent in what he said he would do, because a vision centered man is steadfast in all of his ways. Vision produces discipline, and a high value woman can feel and recognize that energy. So, what does a woman of value look for in a man, and what does he receive in return? She looks for promise, protection, and provision. Promise through his fidelity to his vision, protection from anything that does not align with or believe in him, and provision that allows her to focus on what their union can create. In return, he receives peace, understanding, and the ability to become and reproduce the highest version of himself. I know if you are young, that may sound like a lot, but I promise if you line up your dating this way, you will save yourself a lot of headaches, a lot of trauma, and a lot of tears. Because, as I said before, I do not have trauma when it comes down to operating with the opposite sex. And that doesn't mean because I haven't operated with them. I have operated with the opposite sex, and I have a very good outlook when it comes down to relationships. Chapter 10: Stay prepared. A high value woman stays prepared. Why is it that so many women wait until heartbreak to take themselves seriously? It is often only after pain that they decide to focus on their health, commit to the gym, return to school, and begin leveling up physically, emotionally, and mentally. The issue with this is that it can become a form of retaliation rather than self improvement, rather than true self improvement, where growth is driven by reaction instead of intention. Instead of evolving for yourself in your own fulfillment, you may find yourself responding to the hurt caused by someone else. But real growth comes from self love and genuine desire to become the best version of yourself, not from trying to prove something or recover from external circumstances. Becoming your ideal self should be a continuous journey rooted in internal motivation and a deep understanding of your own worth. When you focus on showing up as your authentic and empowered self, you naturally attract respect, admiration, and alignment from others, including the right partner. Your confidence becomes magnetic because it is built from within, not dependent on validation or approval from the outside. Always remember that your worth is inherent and does not need to be validated by relationships or external experiences. Self improvement should actually be a lifestyle, not a reaction. It should be driven by self love, discipline, and personal growth. A woman of value understands that who she is not contingent on anyone else's actions. I understand that a lot of women may say, I'm doing this for me. I look good for me. I put on makeup for me. I'm working out for me. A lot of times, as women, we will choose our relationships unintentionally based off of the trauma that we have experienced. And this is very unintentional, by the way. You don't even realize that you're doing it until after the relationship and you realize why you chose that person. But we go into these, and then after the relationship, we say, I'm going on my healing journey, right? But I think the key is learning how to integrate your experiences into your wholeness. So, whereas you might have had a little bit of trauma when it comes down to this one person that you chose, remember, you chose this person, you chose to stay with this person. You also have to choose to integrate them into your wholeness as well, because that is the way that you truly heal and become and be a whole woman. I hope that this video resonated with you as much as it resonated with me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, remember to stay perfectly you.